Okay, this is a technician level rapid get to know this machine video. Let's start from live view. So as a technician, when you get to this machine, most of the time it's probably going to look like this. You're going to get a menu by scrolling to the bottom. This will pop up, and then you can shrink your full screen mode. And this starts to give you some menus to work with. You notice over here you got your cameras and such. Target detection. This is a whole nother video, so stay out of here. The house is going to give you your menu. Live, that pretty much works as most units. You know, double click on a screen, it goes full. All these tell you what they are when you hover over them. Again, this is a technician level video, and you guys know what audio on and off means, right? So I'm not going to get into that. Stop recording, start recording. Don't touch those things. Just leave those alone. Okay. Let's get into playback, because people are always going to ask you how to do playback. So real quick, you got to pick a camera, right? You got to pick a camera, then you pick a day. To pick a day, you got to double click on it. If you don't double click, it doesn't go. Notice it's still on November 1st, even though it says October. You didn't double click. Double click, bang. Now it's gone to October. Once you've gotten that into place, then you can make a decision. You gotta find your video, obviously, right? Gotta find your video. Here's what happened, right? Let's say this is the video you want to make a backup of. So you got to hit your scissors right here. You hit them, and it gives you a start time, bang, and an end time right here. Slide it back. So now we have start time and we have end time. Notice the two are right there. Let me just make this a little tighter, because I don't want to go. I want this to be kind of a quick backup. All right. So 8:26 to 8:34, fast, right? Fast, quick, simple. Make sure you got your red check in the middle of the screen, or it's not going to back up. Once you do that, you can hit your export clip. You got to do this twice. First time we do this, you back up the video, then you come through again. This shows you that I have a thumb drive in the video. This is the other video that I did. We're going to hit OK. We can check our status right here. Bang, it's done. Let's clear the list. And now we got to go do it again, because we need the player. So we click on player, we hit OK, and we just do the same thing again. We hit OK to back up the player. But because I've already done this, you're going to notice the player is already here. So I'm not going to back the player up twice. But your next step would be to hit OK, and your player would be there. And then you can take this thumb drive, drop it in a Windows machine. So the backup really is, make sure your red circles here, so you have a channel selected to back up. Your start and your stop time is queued up by hitting these scissors. Double click on the date to populate the exact date, and pick a camera. Try to do one at a time. Don't be trying to back up 6 cameras at a time. Just don't do it, okay? And that's it with your playback. It's pretty straightforward. So we're going to back out of here by going into here. Let's talk about things you're going to do at setup time. Let's see here. We're not going to go into here. That's a whole nother video on its own. Smart analytics. That's a whole nother video. Let's go into camera. So IP camera. This is where you would add a camera if you had to. If you're getting it through me, most of the time this stuff's already going to be done for you. You plug in your IP address, you plug in your password, you hit add, and then you have your camera added to the system. Once your camera is added, you can come in here and you can name it. Let's say it was the new camera all the way down here, camera 18. You can come in here, and this is where you would change the name. And this is where you would tell it, I want to display the name or the date, time, what have you. So that's under display. Privacy mask, we're not going to use that. You will go into video parameters. So let's talk about this. This is where we throttle the video. You can't just let this stuff run wide open. A couple of good rules of thumb. 1080p video, you want it on variable. You want it set to higher if you can. I usually shoot for 10 to 12 frames per second. General, And this is a good number. Notice it gives you a range here. If you really need some good video, you can bump this up to 3072. 2048, 10 frames higher, that's usually a pretty good setting for video. This is continuous. This is your motion, event or motion. Try to keep these so they match. It makes the system run better. Okay? So this is our mainstream. So now let's set up the substream. The substream is what you're going to get on your iPhones and your iPads and what you'll be using there most of the time. So I try to set this on 704 by 480. Again, variable. Video quality doesn't matter that much here. Again, this is iPhone, iPad stuff. This is usually the live screen that you'll be seeing on those smart devices. I like to give it good frame rate. And then we pick a bit rate. Now, if you can do this picture at this frame rate, at this bit rate here, that's a good setting for a 16 camera machine that has 16 cameras on it, and it's a real heavily tasked machine. I've got this one set a little differently because I know that they're going to be watching this live all the time. It's going into a security booth, and they're going to be staring at this a lot over the network. So I know that this is going to be used a lot. With that said, it's primarily going to be used on the local area network. So I've got this bumped up higher. I've got the frame rate a little higher because it's going into a museum and the security desk is going to be watching this video. And it's a 32 channel system that has 18 cameras on it, so there's a lot of system resources left. If it was a 32 channel system and it had 32 cameras on it, then I would turn this down because the machine is just going to choke. And that's it for that menu. Let's go out of here. Let's go into storage. This is where you're going to set up, whether you want motion detection or if you want continuous. Notice you change the color and that's what it does, right? You pick, I want alarm recording, I want whatever. 90% of the time you want to see everything green on all the cameras. So you got to come in, you got to pick your camera, and you got to verify that it's configured correctly. Most of the time, if you get the system from me, this is already done. Capture schedule is for taking pictures at a certain time. We don't do that. Storage device, this is where if you need to add a hard drive, this is where it'll be. You'll check the box and you'll hit initialize, and it'll format the hard drive and it'll add it to the recording space. Storage mode, we're not going to worry about that. Auto backup, we're not going to worry about that. Advanced, we're not going to worry about that. Just leave it alone. So the big one here is your recording schedule and your storage device for adding hard drive. Okay? Next, let's go into system. A couple things you need to know here. If you change this resolution on the HDMI and the VGA, don't touch anything. The screen is going to go black, and then it's going to come up and it's going to ask you if this is a good resolution. If you don't respond yes to that question because your screen is black and it never changes, what that means is you've tried to look at 1080p video on a 720p machine, on a 720 monitor, and you can't see it. So the key here is, if you're going to bump it up like this, let's go to 1920 by 1080p. And let's, I don't even want to do it, but notice the screen goes black. If it's black, don't touch anything, because if the screen won't support the resolution, the NVR will go back to the old setting. Notice, I can see this, so I click OK, and it'll go to the 1080p setting. If you accidentally click on this in the black screen, where there's nothing showing, then you're going to lose it. You're not going to be able to see the video. So the important thing here is do nothing and it reverts back to the old resolution. So if you've gone past the resolution of the monitor, you can actually get the video back. If you don't, you're not going to like it because your machine's going to be unavailable to you. So be real careful with what you do on that menu. Let's go back in. And I'm going to drop this down to here because I don't want to deal with those issues. Okay, Daylight savings time, November 1st, October 2nd. Manually, I have it set up to do it. The bias is 1 hour. Do it at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. Enable wizard. Make sure this is unchecked. If this is checked, every time this thing has a power cycle, it's going to come up and it's going to ask the people to program the system. Make sure this is off. I shut it off before I ship it. Enable password. Pretty self-explanatory. If you uncheck that box, the machine will be wide open. Anybody can go anywhere and do anything without a password. Change your times. If you set your daylight savings time mode up, go out, go to a different menu, and then come back, because you'll notice that if this needs to update the time, it'll do it after you leave the menu and come back in. So if you mess with the daylight savings time mode, always leave the menu and come back to verify that your time is set correctly. Users. This is where we change permission on the user. Notice the little green box. We click on this. They're looking for the admin password. So let's just plug this in here real quick. Now that you've got the admin password in, this is where we can say, okay, this particular user is only going to get the first 2 cameras. So what you do is just uncheck the rest of these. And then that user, whenever they log in remotely, will only be able to see camera 1 and 2. But maybe on let's see here, local live view, maybe we want them to have them all. So you can pick what these people get access to depending upon whether they're local, right on the machine, or if they're remotely trying to access it. So that gives you your cameras, remote configuration. This is what this particular user can do remotely, and this is what they can do locally. So you've got a tremendous amount of flexibility with what you can give this particular user access to. A new feature for 4.0 is live view permission. If you uncheck all these boxes and then you log out of this machine, the machine will go black and it will stay black, because you've essentially said no user has access to any live video unless they log in. As it stands right now, all live video is available to anybody without logging in. This is where you can change that. Network settings. This is a 32 channel unit with multiple network interface cards. So if you notice, we've got multiple address or net faults. Leave this alone. I usually pre-configure it before it goes, but this has to do with having a separate camera network and a separate viewing network. DHCP. This is where we can plug in our domain name service if need be. Call me if you need any help with that. This is where we can change our ports if we need to update any port information. We're going to stay out of here. This is a whole nother conversation in itself. Excuse me, advanced, more settings. This is where we change our ports if need be. Network advanced. And you can type in here, and if 80 is being blocked, you can move it to 81 and then address it in your router. Event. This is where we're going to find our motion detection for the cameras. Little different place on the 4.0 firmware versus the 3.0 firmware. This is where we turn motion detection on. This is where we set the sensitivity of it. These cameras are all looking into fluorescent lighting, so it's driving them crazy. Smart event, we're not going to go here. Live view, you probably will use this. If it's a 16 camera system, maybe you want the default live view to be 4x4. If it's more, maybe you want it 5x5. This one's 18, so I've got it set on 5x5. And your video output is, right, what are you programming? HDMI 2, we want 4x4. HDMI 1, we want it on 5x5. So this is for event output. We're not going to use this. Ignore this over here. This is you programming what you want a particular screen to look like. Video screen. This is where you can change what camera shows where. If you notice, camera 1 is showing up in box 1. If we want to move it to here, we just go here and we click on, excuse me, D1's there, D2's there. Let's flip that back. D1, highlight it, pick the next camera, D2. So you just move the box and pick the camera you want to show, and it'll move it around. If you want to do a 3-camera grid as your default, and this is where you choose which monitor output you want to program this particular view to. And this is where you can build a custom layout, and that'll show up back here. In your live view, you'll go to the bottom and it'll show a custom layout. So if the people want it to be seen a certain way, as an option, all outdoor cameras versus all indoor cameras, you would come in here, you would go to live view, then you would go to view, and you would come into here and you would create a custom layout, give it a name, save it, and then it'll display over here again on live view on the bottom. If you ever need a firmware update for a machine, take a picture of this and send it to me. If you have a machine that's acting strange and you found that maybe a camera wire had some water in it from being outside, and it maybe potentially fed some voltage into the machine, sometimes you have to default these machines and reprogram them. This is the one you want up top when you're going to do that. Do this one. Don't do the second one, don't do the third one, do the first one. And the rest of these don't have a whole lot of value. So for a quick run through with you, I think that'll help you get to a point where you can be a little bit more effective with the system. Beyond that, if you have any questions, reach out to me. Okay, thank you.